Hello everybody! Welcome to another episode of Reacting Reddit, where real humans read, react, and summarize trending topics and stories for your viewing pleasure. Today we're going to be talking about Pepe Le Pew. He may be a fictional character, but that doesn't mean he can't be removed from movies due to allegations of violence and various bad things against women. Let's get to it. First, let's get some context. Right now, we're reading from the Daily Wire. The amorous French skunk, Pepe Le Pew, won't be making an appearance in the upcoming sequel to Space Jam. The news comes shortly after a New York Times columnist claimed the animated skunk featured in Loony Tune's cartoons perpetuates rape culture, according to Deadline. While the writer, Anthony DAlessandro, said Pepe's firing from Space Jam: A New Legacy has nothing to do with the recent remarks made by the New York Times' Charles Blow, he wrote, "Wait until you hear about the scene with Pepe which was cut." Now, that scene from Deadline. Pepe was set to appear in a black and white Casablanca-like Ricks Cafe sequence. Pepe, playing a bartender, starts hitting on a woman at the bar played by Santo. He begins kissing her arm, which she pulls back, then slamming Pepe into the chair next to hers. She then pours her drink on Pepe and slaps him hard, sending him spinning on a stool, which is then stopped by LeBron James' hand. James and Bugs Bunny are looking for Lola, and Pepe knows her whereabouts. Pepe then tells the guys that Penelope Cat has filed a restraining order against him. James makes a remark in the script that Pepe can't grab other tunes without their consent. Now we're reading from Breitbart. Charles Blow, a left-wing columnist for the New York Times, has suggested canceling the popular Looney Tunes characters Speedy Gonzales and Pepe Le Pew, the former because it is racist, the latter for contributing to rape culture. Charles M. Blow stated, "RW blogs are mad because I said Pepe Le Pew added to rape culture. Let's see. Number 1. He grabs, kisses a girl stranger repeatedly without consent and against her will. Number 2, she struggles mightily to get away from him, but he won't release her. Number 3, he locks the door to prevent her from escaping." The Washington Post says, "The Daily Telegraph dubbed Macron President Pepe Le Pew on Thursday after the French leader publicly told Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull that his wife was delicious in front of a crowd of journalists. I want to thank you for your welcome. Thank you and your delicious wife for your warm welcome," Macron told Turnbull at the end of a news conference in Sydney on Wednesday, referring to Lucy Turnbull. Macron, who prides himself on speaking English in foreign appearances and only last week addressed the US Congress in English, appeared to have made a linguistic slip-up during his visit to Australia. While the English word delicious is generally used for food and sometimes has a sexual connotation, the French word délicieux is more versatile and can be used in certain contexts to mean lovely or charming. Poor dude. The Daily Wire says, Pepe Le Pew does have an odd history. Far from the iconic status of Looney Tunes leader Bugs Bunny, Pepe Le Pew is a peripheral character, a small target for the culture war to take aim at. Although he is strangely well known despite appearing in just 17 cartoons. Pepe's Frenchness is pretty dodgy itself, a romantic, sexually aggressive stereotype. In his first starring cartoon, 1945's Odorable Kitty, in which Pepe was caught out by his wife, it was revealed that Pepe was in fact American. The French accent was a facade for the ladies, which is slightly more accurate. There are no skunks in France, after all. The Daily Wire also adds, filmmakers weren't ignorant to his ways. The tables have been turned on Pepe before. In 1952, Little Beau Pepe, he sprays himself with cologne, the scent of which turns on Penelope so much that she now becomes a sexual aggressor, which causes Pepe to run a mile. "Control yourself, madame!" And in 1959's Really Scent, the cat, this time born with a natural skunk-style stripe, is so desperate to mate that she douses herself with smelly cheese to match Pepe's disgusting stench, once again causing Pepe to run from her. TMZ wrote, he wrote up cartoons, the critic brought up cartoons like Speedy Gonzales and Mommy Two Shoes. The former being another Looney Tunes character, he says, pushed racist stereotypes against Mexicans, and the latter being a Tom and Jerry character, portrayed as a heavyset black maid who speaks with a characterized voice. You usually just see her legs or feet, but her full figure was depicted too. Those two examples specifically address his race concern, but he threw in Pepe as well as another tune that telegraphed the wrong message, saying the French skunk normalized and perpetuated rape culture. Of course, a lot of people had very different reactions, some agreeing and others lambasting Blow for suggesting a drawing could sway real-life behavior. The great Dave Chappelle once touched on this exact issue in a stand-up special of his, Killing Them Softly, where he too brought up Pepe Le Pew and flat out called him a rapist. He discussed other kids' shows that looked much different through an adult lens, like Sesame Street characters, which he hilariously compared to troubled adults. Say what you will, but 20th century media is certainly cringeworthy in 2021. Now let's look at Wikipedia. Wikipedia had something interesting in it that I found. So, Pepe Le Pew is a character from the Warner Bros. Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies series of cartoons, which were first introduced in 1945. Pepe is depicted as a French striped skunk. Pepe is constantly on the quest for love. However, his offensive skunk odor and his aggressive pursuit of romance typically cause other characters to run from him. Now, in something that none of these media posts brought out, the Looney Tunes cartoons actually switched Pepe's role multiple times, and considering he only occurred in 17 cartoons, I thought it was quite interesting how many cartoons, within 10 years of him being introduced, there were new cartoons kind of pointing out that, okay, yeah, it was bad for him to be the aggressor, so now let's flip it so the girl's the aggressor. And this was even in 1950s, so ironically, the original cartoons were, average for their time, whereas the ones to give it like empowering the girl to pursue Pepe, I would say those were pretty forward thinking, because, these came out in 1949. Now let's read that part of Wikipedia. In a role reversal, the Academy Award-winning 1949 short for Sentimental Reasons ended with an accidentally painted blue and now terrified Pepe being pursued by a madly smitten Penelope, who had been dunked in dirty water, leaving her with a ratty appearance and developing a head cold, which completely clogged up her nose and her ability to smell. It turns out that Pepe's new color is just right for her, plus the fact that the blue paint now covers his putrid scent. Penelope locks him up inside a perfume shop, hiding the key down her chest, and proceeds to chase the now imprisoned and effectively odorless Pepe. Ha, what a twist. And it's kind of funny, isn't it? How in our culture nowadays, people really like jumping on the bandwagon, especially when we're gonna cancel stuff. And I'm not at all saying that we should be showing Pepe Le Pew cartoons to children, but it's quite interesting if you actually watch the cartoons. It's a commentary on how some people, usually males, just completely ignore the fact that the girl doesn't have any interest in them. And if you actually watch the rest of the cartoon, you'll see that it never works for Pepe. It would be one thing if he was just this sexually aggressive male who was finding success and was getting happy endings, but he doesn't. The cartoons end with him getting hurt, slapped, the girl getting away, him ultimately being alone. And so that's kind of the thing to ask yourself. When we're getting so into this cancel culture, if we don't have these things in our media, how are people going to know that it's unpleasant, right? Like, don't we need movies about the Holocaust to show how horrible the Holocaust was? Is it right to just get rid of everything bad? And that's kind of the tricky part, and especially with these cartoons, on face value, you see YouTube videos with 7-minute clips just showing Pepe pushing the girl and being really pushy, just like a lot of guys are, and they totally shouldn't be, and I understand that's frustrating, but the moral of the cartoon isn't to do that. And if you watch the whole cartoon, you don't leave with the understanding that, oh, I just need to be really, really over the top and always ignore girls' rejections and I'm gonna get somewhere. That's not the moral of the cartoon. The cartoon makes fun of guys who are like that and shows how they never get any girls. And at least that's my reaction to spending the time to watch the cartoons. And so it's a bit odd, isn't it? Because we often will talk about something as if like you can read so many sentences saying Pepe Le Pew perpetuates rape culture, Pepe Le Pew perpetuates rape culture, Pepe Le Pew perpetuates rape culture. Yet the vast majority of these people never watched the full cartoons, and they're very short cartoons. We're talking about, like, you could watch all of them in like 30 or 40 minutes. They're not very long. So it's problematic, isn't it? When we're all making these claims, just jumping on this bandwagon that something is bad, when in some ways it actually teaches otherwise. It really depends on your perspective, right? And that's kind of the problem. Like, what happens once we get rid of everything? How do people know what's unacceptable if we don't have mockery of what's unacceptable? And especially in this case, one, the Pepe Le Pew wasn't even pulled from the Looney Tunes movie, or he wasn't even pulled from Space Jam 2 because of this controversy. It literally had nothing to do with it, yet people are acting like it's the entire reason and claiming that it's part of cancel culture. But really, you can find articles talking about how Pepe Le Pew perpetuates rape culture. That's a buzz sentence that has been around for 7 or 8 years. There's tons of Reddit posts, tons of articles online. It's nothing new that people are pointing out how creepy Pepe Le Pew's advances on the female cat are. There's tons of evidence online that has been talked about for years and years and years. So I actually believe the studio. I think it's totally possible that they just cut it for some other reason, and this guy just happened to write an article around the same time on a subject which has been talked about multiple times every single year for the past decade. Yet here we are with a bunch of people, one being offended by Pepe Le Pew, not looking at the cartoon, not thinking maybe he, takes it further, and a bunch of other people who never even watched the cartoon and are mad that cartoons are being subjected to all this cancel culture when really it wasn't even canceled because of the article. It's a quite interesting parallel to the problems in our society, isn't it? All right, so now let's get to the Reddit comments. The first reply is by Lemony Lips, and this is on the Ask Woman. What's the name? Ask Woman? Yeah, Ask Woman subreddit. So the question of the subreddit is, does Pepe Le Pew cartoon perpetuate violence against women? What do you think, woman on Reddit? Lemony Lips says, something can be funny and also problematic, and Pepe is definitely the latter. Although, I don't think Pepe is that funny. That shit is tired. Book One Love says, Looney Tunes was made a really long time ago. There is a lot of problematic things in the cartoons. The characters dress up different ethnic stereotypes a lot, apart from all the sexism and the violence. However, they are still funny. I think if kids are taught by their parents what's right, what they watch on TV and the toys they play with, there was a similar thread yesterday about the influence of Barbie, they're gonna turn out fine. October Specken says, I'm surprised Bugs Bunny got away with so much cross-dressing. I'd assume that had been taboo. Party in the USSR says, even though Pepe does nothing physically or sexually violent, the act of stalking someone, especially that you are romantically interested in, is an act of violence itself. Ooh, I totally disagree with that. Like, stalking's bad, but a stalker who isn't violent is fundamentally nowhere near as dangerous as a stalker who's violent. I'm not trying to discredit that people get scary stalkers. What I'm trying to do is point out that domestic violence is very real. There are more people killed by their husband or their wife than a stranger. So to suggest that stalking is a form of violence, that is not true. That is a misuse of the word violence. Violence is physical. You can have you can have pains in other things, but violence itself, the act of violence, is to physically harm a person or force them to do something. Stalking somebody is bad, it's fraudulent, could be a crime, it's very creepy, but it is not a violent act. That isn't true. And stalking also isn't incredibly threatening. Incredibly threatening is somebody pointing a gun at you or somebody pointing a knife at you. These are incredibly threatening events. A lot of people exhibit some form of stalking behavior when they're romantic. They just do it online. And I'm very hesitant to say that all those humans, all those girls as well as guys, are all violent because they're trying to stalk a person that they're interested in. Girls in particular, and guys as well, when you see somebody who you don't have a connection with, but you're attracted to them, a lot of us will, follow them and try and find, a moment to properly get an introduction. They drop something or they, look lost and you ask them if they need help or something. I mean, humans do this kind of stuff and we shouldn't be so dismissive of the fact that we do this. I understand it's frustrating, but it is a part of humanity. And I'm not saying that it's right. I'm not saying it's right to stalk somebody. You should, if you are attracted to a stranger, you should just walk up to them and say, hey, I'm sorry to be weird, but I thought you were really attractive and I wanted to just say hello. Or, be straight up with them. Don't fucking be creepy and follow them without them listening and that kind of thing. I'm just pointing out here that we tend to, as a society, we tend to lock ourselves up in our houses with our big tall walls and get really paranoid while there's something almost relatively totally harmless outside. And I'm not saying no stalkers are harmful, but a lot of humans exhibit stalking behavior, not just guys, definitely not just guys. And what, it's okay? Like what, you have a crush who works at the coffee shop. You go to the coffee shop every other day because you want to see your crush's face. Are you violent? Are you wrong? Should you go to hell because you're doing that? Like, come on. It's a bit ridiculous. You can't be so extreme in black and white. That said, I have no idea where I stand on this because I believe culture informs media to a great extent, and less so the other way around. I think Pepe is a symptom, not a cause. It's also like none of these people have watched the cartoons. There's like a quarter of the cartoons he's in where his role gets flipped and he is the problem and he's the one who's being pursued and he doesn't like it, and it points out that controversy. Like, it's kind of frustrating when people read the title of a book and then they start talking to their friends summarizing the book when they never fucking read it. I mean, authors and people who write, they tend to have a symbol. There's something they're trying to communicate. And if you don't read the whole thing, if you don't listen to the whole thing, you can't act like you understand what the cartoon is fundamentally, right? And I'm not trying to say there is no racism in Looney Tunes. There absolutely is. There's tons of racism. I'm just saying that you can't think it's as simple as just canceling the racism in culture, in cartoons, isn't gonna cancel the racism in you. And we all have racism in us. The problem is we like to think, no, I'm not racist. I have a black friend, or I'm black, or I'm Latino. I can't be racist. But we all have the potential to be racist. It's just like your ego. If you want to not be prejudicing, if you want to not be racist, you have to constantly monitor and watch your behavior and gauge when you're doing things that could be taken as racist. You can't just be like, oh, I'm not a racist person. Nothing I say is racist, but those fuckers, they are gonna burn in hell because they're all racist. Those shitty bastards. Right? It's just fucking, people are hypocritical, like super hypocritical. We all have to deal with our problems, and we should really stop talking so much shit about other people and focus on what we need to do better about ourselves. That being said, I'm pretty racist against white people. I think we're all entitled pricks, and we need to do more to make the world better, because the reality is us white people have it easy compared to minorities. You may think, oh yeah, it was just your grandparents who raped and pillaged and murdered and had slaves. But guess what? You have an easier life now because of those malicious, horrible things that your grandparents' grandparents did to other people. So whether you like it or not, you benefit. And it is your responsibility to be aware of this benefit and do what you can to improve the quality of life for minorities. And this is why I am racist against white people, because so many of us think, oh no, it's not my problem. I'm just a white person now. I never had any slaves. I don't benefit from any way at all for white privilege. No way. I have a hard life. What are you talking about? Bye. Kem Lowton says, no, you are not supposed to root for Pepe. You're supposed to be on the side of the cat trying to get away from him. October 71 Speckon says, I have a friend that apparently, as a child, did a skit based on what they saw in a cartoon. The assignment was to illustrate a certain culture. The teacher made my friend stop halfway through and had the parents take the kid to a museum or something. Typical. When I lived in Saudi Arabia, in the international schools, we went on like weekend-long camping trips in the desert, and we just needed a signature. Then I came to the United States, and I heard about the great food trip to Food Lion, and I thought, whoa, we're gonna feed lions? Oh, America's amazing, this is so cool. And then they were like, all right, if you guys wanna go to the Food Lion, you gotta get signed permission from your parents. And I was like, oh no, this totally makes sense. I mean, if we're gonna be feeding lions, that shit's scary. No wonder they want our parents to sign a permission slip to make sure it's okay. You know, this is gonna be the most badass field trip ever. I was so excited. And then we go to Food Lion and it's a grocery store. I did a double take. I was like, really? We don't even miss a whole day of class because we got back through half the day, and we needed a fucking waiver to go to a Food Lion? Oh my God, this country is so ridiculous. Especially as a kid, I had just camped in the desert with my classmates, and not all the parents were there. There were just like 2 of the 10 or 20 kids' parents were there, and the rest were teachers, because it was normal to go on these really cool adventures for school and go do things over the weekend and go camping out in the desert and learn about shit. It was amazing and exciting. And then I come to the US and they make a big deal about going to the grocery store. Like, come on, it's so lame. It was so lame. And in general here, tangent almost over, we baby the fuck out of everything. And most of my peers in the US right now, the people who are my age, they've been so babied by their parents that they can't handle life. They don't know how to deal with hard things because their parents always cooked for them. Their parents always cleaned for them. Their parents always did other stuff for them. Their parents always provided for them in every way except for love and time. It's so fucking problematic. We have this whole society that just divorces and spends most of the time with the children. Oh, you're not spending time with your kid, your nanny is. Oh, guess what? Your nanny, immigrant nanny, knows your son and your daughter better than you do. That's fucked up. We shouldn't be having kids just so we can pay other people to raise them. We should be building our lives so we can spend time with our children and get them experience, cook with them, clean with them, spend time with them instead of fucking babying them and paying other people to take care of them. It's so dumb. Bodong says, the Looney Tunes weren't just problematic, they were inherently and utterly racist across the ages. For example, Bugs Bunny nips the nips. All this and rabbits do. Which is which? The list goes on and on. Yeah, Looney Tunes was quite racist. But it's not so much that Looney Tunes was racist as it is that okay, I shouldn't single out US. Society was very racist back then and is still quite racist. They're just less racist. less overtly racist, whereas back then, racism was much more overt. Racism is still a big problem in our societies, but it's not as dominant as a problem as it was back when Looney Tunes was originated. And as that other commenter said, cartoons in the media reflect society. So if you see something that's acceptable in a cartoon, well, it's a good indication that at the time, it was acceptable. And if you wanna be fucking scared shitless and you care about women's rights, watch a Bond movie from the 50s or 60s. Watch one of the first Bond movies. It's disgusting. And then over time, it's interesting seeing how the role of the female goes from this utterly useless, helpless damsel whose only purpose is to go get rescued to actually playing a big role in the storyline and doing multiple things to save James Bond, to the point where the storyline couldn't continue and James Bond would die if it wasn't for the female's assistance. And it's quite interesting how extreme the pivot was. And it took about 50 years of Bond movies for that to happen. So I recommend checking that out. It's actually quite an interesting way to study how sexism is portrayed in our societies. Patty Mayonnaise says, I agree with you. It's a cartoon. It's not funny to actually fall off a cliff, and you will most certainly die. But you know, it's a cartoon. Zoo Green Jake says, the show Pepe Le Pew seems to teach that pushy behavior will never work on the girl. Hey, holy shit. Look, it's somebody who actually watched the cartoon they're talking about and got the main lesson, instead of just watching 7-second clips showing the girl being pushed over and over and over again. You could actually compile all the clips of then the girl flipping that role, right? But unfortunately, people don't like to be thorough. They like to just watch enough to validate what they already believe about the world, and that's really our biggest problem that perpetuates everything, racism and sexism included. We don't listen to each other enough. We don't try to understand each other. We like to just talk shit, yell, and fight. Tomato B says, it's a cartoon. It's not a beacon of advocacy or anything. In my opinion, if it triggered any sort of ill feelings in me, I just wouldn't watch it. The show is funny taken at face value. That's fine. I wouldn't say he is rapey, because he doesn't rape her. He does exhibit sexual harassment when you look at it deeper. I'm a woman. I like the cartoon. But it is important to recognize and acknowledge the undertones as well. And again, if you actually watch the cartoons, he gets his just desserts. He gets switched, and he doesn't want the girl because she's being too affectionate. He runs away, and she chases him and locks him up and traps him. Like, he gets the same thing he dishes out if you watch all the cartoons. But obviously, people don't give a fuck about watching all the cartoons. I'm speaking to nobody, and this is the end of the video. Thanks for watching. If you like this kind of content, please reach out to us, like one of our videos, watch another one of our videos, or comment below. And if you really want to, subscribe to our channel. All right, everybody, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Ciao.